your request for additional staffing resources. But I do that with one caveat. While we have understaffed the planning and engineering functions, we've also misguided them so that they've spent more time helping developers instead of protecting the character of the town. I strongly suggest that people call and request that a clear priority be given for these extra resources. I strongly suggest that the top priority of these resources be the development of a design review board charged with protecting the town's character. That character directly relates to your property values. I encourage people to insist that the new resources be spent on finding ways to protect that town character and keep that as a priority over developing village plans, wastewater plans, and other types of activities that encourage development. The staffing request for planning and engineering has many goals for the new resources, but too many of them are focused on encouraging building. It speaks to developing village plans, for example. This is a code phrase for helping increase density. It speaks to developing transportation plans and developing wastewater plans. These are also code phrases which translate to helping increase the infrastructure to accommodate increased building. It speaks to helping walk-in traffic, to find deeds and site plans. It speaks to helping people navigate zoning bylaws. These are code phrases for helping developers. We do not owe the developers this, but only you can change the priorities. Without a call from you, the staff will continue spending a good percentage of their resources helping the developers. The staff needs to hear from you and hear often from you. Otherwise, they say no one seems to care. And if you do not call or voice your concern that you want the town's character to be a higher priority than affordable housing or helping developers, then they have no reason but to continue with business as usual. Decades ago, we as a town mistakenly were, as we know now, pursuing an aggressive strategy towards unbridled residential development. We've taken a turn where we're more concerned about the town's character and the shared cost of infrastructure to support that building. But that turn in direction is slow in coming, and the staff needs to hear from you. They need to hear from you whether you'd like them to increase density and the infrastructure to accommodate it, or whether you want to spend the new resources and figure out ways to ensure that building designs reflect the character of the town that you move to, whether you want the new staff resources to help developers, or whether you want the new resources to protect your interests. There can be only one top priority. Let's make it ours.
Assuming new resources, of course.
Matt Liebman from Tuttle Drive. A couple of comments and then a question. First comment is that I strongly agree with one of the previous speakers who spoke about a regressive property tax that we have in town. I think that one of the solutions perhaps may lie in a less regressive and more progressive tax structure. And there are many ideas to bring forward. I don't want to talk about them right now, but I'm sure we can talk about them later. Second comment is that the biggest budget buster that Bill Mullen just mentioned is the healthcare issue. It's not the wages. I have tremendous respect for the staff in the town and also for the volunteers who work with the staff on all the various committees. And their wages are probably not as much as they should be paid. But the healthcare costs are really the main issue, and that's statewide, if not a national issue. So those are my two comments, and then my question is that, I guess it's a comment and a question. We've come to a point now in the last several years where we've gotten a new sewage treatment plant in place, which is supposed to help development in the Kelly's Corner area, and also I think in South Acton. We've developed Route 2A perhaps to the max now with the replacement of an old farm with a fantastic shopping center. And we've come to the point where perhaps the commercial build-out is almost to the max. And I'm wondering, since we've been hearing so much for many years that we really need to improve our commercial base and improve our revenues from our commercial base. If that is tapped out right now, that wasn't really addressed in this booklet, and whether or not there are ways to go beyond what they're already providing. So that's my question. Thank you.
I think we will have some response to that perhaps at the end. Perhaps sooner. I don't see anybody standing. Whoops, that struck somebody loose.
Mark Oxenberg, 5 Valley Road. I just want to reiterate that it's time after we had a comment earlier about choices, heard a lot of discussion kind of on the other side of that. and I would like to make a comment back in support of that. We're basically income constrained at this point. We have less money from the state because income taxes are down because of the depressed economy, sales taxes are down because of the depressed economy. We don't have a bottomless pit here. We have people who are under financial hardship in this town, whether they're either underemployed or unemployed right now, and we're talking about going back and getting more money from people who are already making their own tough personal choices. The town needs to do the same as their citizens. They need to make tough choices, start from the bottom up. What do we have to have? What can we live without until another day? It was great. 5 years ago, money was flowing. People had stock options. You know, everything was wonderful. Prices were going up, property taxes going up. That's great. We don't have that situation today, and we need to kind of adjust to that and put off some of our fund spending for another time. Thanks.
I'm constrained in New York at some of that fund spending, for instance, supports your fire department, police department. No, in 1990, I think it was, one of the times I was chairman before, when we had a sudden drop into recession that wasn't expected, I had this vivid memory. The gentleman appeared before the Board of Selectmen and said, with great vehemence, I voted for Proposition 2.5 to cut my taxes. I didn't vote for it to cut my services, and refused to see that there was any connection between the two. There is. Yes, sir.
Scott Smyers, 382 Central Street. I just want to say I read through this whole document carefully, as most of us here have, and I find it hard to believe that the school, particularly the school part of it, and I'd like to find out some more details on it. It seems that it's presented here, if you don't vote for the override, it's going to become some sort of ghetto high school or school system. And I grew up in Boxborough. I live in Acton now, so I have a small child that's going to be going to the school system and going to be here for a long time. But I think that it's unreasonable to think that we can accept that as the only option is either you vote for the override and we can put in some more teachers, or you don't vote for it and we just start cutting the teachers immediately. It seems like there's been some creative ways to get around shortcomings in the budgets in the past, such as creating fee structures. I know there's some sort of fees for parking that they use to pay for some services at the high school in particular. There's fees for athletics, there's fees for busing. There should be some other ways to do it besides raising our taxes such an outrageous amount at the high end. And any amount is stretching it for a lot of us. And so I'll just say it now because I'm not going to be voting for the override, and I hope there's a lot of people here who won't be either. Thank you.
Lauren?
I just wanted to speak a little bit about the value of your tax dollars in Acton. Being a town volunteer, I'm in town hall a lot. Our family went through a crisis, and we got to experience the help and support of town employees, fire department, police department. And I have to say, being in town hall as much as I am, I see the most hard-working people. They are so dedicated to the people in this town in jobs which are relatively thankless. And they could be working in the private sector, making a lot more money, and they've made a choice to work for our town. And I think it's really important to dig deep and let them know how much we appreciate them. This is our school teachers, our firefighters, our town engineers, all the people that work in town hall. And again, this is public service that they've chosen to do for us, and we need to show them our gratitude. Thank you.
Ken Henderson, Fort Pond Road. I've been living in Acton for over 30 years. I've seen my taxes go from $800 to $8,000. The problem is basically the students, the class sizes is killing us. Is there any, thinking outside the box, is there any way to kind of give a helping hand to people that say over 60 years old, that don't have kids in the school systems, that were willing to stay in Acton if their taxes don't increase? I'm seeing more and more of my friends bailing out of Acton because of the taxes. If the taxes were stable, or they were frozen for anyone over 60 who didn't have any kids in the school system, they would have stayed in the town of Acton a lot longer. So I think we should look at that, because if my taxes increase from 800 to 8,000 in 30 years, can you imagine another 30 years what the taxes would be?
Yes, ma'am.
Nancy Duggan from Oak Road. First of all, I'd like to thank you for having this meeting and this booklet, because a lot of times it's hard to find the information and you don't know who to call or who to ask. So at least it's a start. And if we wait for town meeting for all the debate, it doesn't seem as helpful to me. I'm going to need some time to think about this. So thank you for the booklet. I'd just like to say that the fund spending idea really makes me chuckle. And the other idea of, parents, let's let the parents pay. I don't know if any of you have seen this, but there's an email going around saying, let's let the parents fundraise. Parents have fundraised at the grade school level, at the middle school level, at the high school level. They pay fees. You can't even be on the speech and debate team without paying a fee. The kids pay their own admission to the speech, which they should, but I'm just saying, that every child has to pay his own admission for something as simple as a speech and debate tournament. There's not a lot of fund money coming out of your tax dollars. The money from your tax dollars is paying the employees, the good teachers. I know one teacher, and it's only one, but he could have taken a job from 2 other school systems for much more money. But he likes the Acton school system, and even though he'd only been here for a year, he took the lower paying job at Acton. You can't ask more than that. These teachers are so invested in these great kids. It's our duty to pay for their education. That's what income tax pays, the federal level, state tax pays for other things, local property tax. That's just what it is. Should there be no other way? Yes, we could think about that, come up with one. I'd love to hear it. But right now, that's when the money comes for your police, for your fire, for your streets, and for your schools. That's the only source of income. If it's limited to 2.5, and the expenses for medical and teaching or salaries of your police officers or whatever are contracted, the contract's already signed. You can't drop out of it. To go up by 5%, which is what I think I understood from this booklet. They contracted to go up by 5%, and we're only scheduled to pay 2.5% more. We have to come up with the money. But to ask parents to fundraise any more than they have and is unrealistic. You're not going to come up with that much of a shortfall. I don't think. I find it unrealistic and almost offensive, because right now you have 42 and 44 kids in a high school English class. Do you know how many papers that is to correct, the amount of time and energy put into it? 44 and 42 kids in a high school English class. You can do that in Acton and still have great scores because you have a great pool of people that are supporting their kids in 100 other ways. But you can't, there's no fun money. This is not 6 kids in a class, I don't know, doing paper mache. I don't know where people come up with that idea. And I think if you read this booklet, it's really about the 5% and the 2.5. And if you start pointing at seniors, parents, sports, whatever, you're not being realistic. The problem is, where is the money going to come from? And how are we going to raise it? Not, or what would you like to cut? And I haven't really heard anyone say a logical thing to cut that would make a 2.5% difference. So that's my.
I would have observed editorial that there was one lady that did make a suggestion for cuts. One. Senator Reese.
Thank you. I apologize for my voice in advance. I'm losing it here. But I did want to address briefly the question of helping seniors in terms of their tax bill, because this is something I've been working on ever since I first got in the legislature. And we have made some progress. We were able to get what is called the circuit breaker in. We were able to get the ability for the towns to pay for volunteer service from seniors to help them raise some money to pay their property tax and various other adjustments. None of it's enough, and I'm the first one to admit that, and I continue to work on it. And last year we came very close to getting more flexibility for the town in terms of giving abatements. But there are certain constraints we have. The circuit breaker is state money coming in, so that's new money coming into the town, going directly to the seniors really, but helping them pay their property tax. If we do something in terms of freezing seniors' tax, that shifts the burden to people who, in most cases, may be able to pay for it, but in some cases may not. And there are people living in town who are struggling to pay their taxes who are not seniors, and we keep that in mind as we move ahead. So we're looking for giving the town flexibility without causing further turmoil and division within the town and the town's needs. And we will continue to do that, and that's really a first priority this year. We came very close in the last session, so I'm very hopeful that we will. The second thing I wanted to talk just briefly about is the whole, what state monies are going to be coming back. And without a doubt, every community, certainly every community in my Senate district, is struggling exactly as Acton is. And I saw a gentleman here earlier from Littleton, who I know is thinking about doing the same thing we're doing here tonight to start this process of discussion. But we certainly will be struggling to try and put more and more money back into the communities. And that is, I am going to work this year to try and move ahead one year the plan to reinstate the lottery money so that we begin to get more back in that category. We're going to be working with the Chapter 70, as Representative Eldridge said. That's going to be a major issue this year. So we're all very aware of it and going to be working very hard with you to try and help get over this hump. And it's a hump for everyone. Thanks.
We are also interested in feedback on the usefulness of a meeting of this kind, and I suspect as we end this topic, we will lose a lot of people in the audience for one commitment or another. So I wonder if we could have a show of hands. How many of you feel, at least so far, that this evening has been useful? And how many, by similar show of hands, think this is really a waste of time? Well, it looks like it's a fairly popular activity. What I'm going to do now is I want to leave a couple of minutes for Peter on behalf of the town and one of the two school representatives to spend 2 or 3 minutes answering some of the embedded questions that we've heard. I'm going to take only those people that are standing and that have not spoken, unless we end up with extra time, which I suspect we will not, and I'm going to recognize Ann Shank.
I think it's very obvious from this meeting tonight that we are funding our town from the wrong source of taxes, that the property tax is too regressive, and instead of having a resolution for whatever town meeting, I think our town meeting should have a resolution to not roll back the income tax, but to keep the income tax at 5.3 or maybe go up to 5.5. And then perhaps we should look at the education formula fund for affluent suburban school systems, which Acton sort of falls into. And perhaps we should look at what I call the lovely trickle-down tax theory, where the federal government gives back a lot of tax money. We get $600 back from the federal government, but it seems to me that many of you have had a much higher rise in your property tax increase. So you had your taxes cut. But what we really need to do is to go to the state level, I think, and although we have Jamie and Pam here to help us, we really need to do something other than base our entire local funding on the property tax.
Vicki Williams, 5 Horseshoe Drive. I'd like to second what Ann said. I totally agree with her. I'd also like to raise the controversial issue of the split tax rate. We're here tonight. I think many of us are residents, and maybe some of us are also businesses here in town. But if you want to relieve the debt on the residential properties, one way to do it is to increase the amount that the businesses pay. We've done it, we've not done it, we've done it again, and we've not done it. And it seems to me in the history of that, we didn't lose any businesses when we raised the taxes, especially if we say that we're going to raise it for a short period of time in order to get over this hump until we can resolve the issues as Ann has suggested at the state level. It would help senior citizens as well as those of us that may not have the money to pay for increased taxes at this time but would like to vote for them. And businesses, I know, are struggling as well in this economy, but they may be able to handle it a little bit better than the rest of us can. It's just a suggestion.
Charles Cadillac, Olivia Road.
Thanks for using the front microphone, I thought they were contaminated.
I'm not concerned. A lot of things have been said that I could spend a lot of time answering, but I'm going to focus on just a couple of points which I think may be useful. One is the issue of certain costs going up, specifically health insurance has been mentioned. You can also make the same argument for the cost of utilities. When cost of things such as health insurance and utilities goes up, it affects everybody. It's not a matter, well, the school and town budgets go up, so somebody has to make up the difference. You know, the revenue only goes up, limited by 2.5%, actually it goes up more like 3 to 4%. But our costs go up because of health insurance and so on. Yes, health insurance is very expensive and grows very rapidly for the schools, for industry, for individuals who pay their own. We are all poorer for it. When oil goes to $50 a gallon, a barrel rather, we are all poorer for it, and we can all afford less collectively. It's not a matter of shifting who's going to pay. We just cannot afford as much as we did before. So when the costs go up, something else has to be reduced, whether it's in the school budget, the town budget, or my budget. So I just don't like the thinking that says, well, the costs go up, so obviously we got to raise taxes to make up for it. Because I don't think that's how you, who work for industry, get your raise. In a very closely connected topic, a couple of people mentioned that, especially in terms of school budgets, some of them is going up because of contracts. These contracts are negotiated by the school committee. They're not inflicted on us by some alien outside force. So if the contracts are too expensive, we're spending too much, and they need to be less in the future. We control that, not somebody else. I just don't like these arguments, and they're not myths, that all possible costs have been wrung out of the system. This is not the same as saying there is fat and other such incendiary words. It's just that it has to be done differently. We have to start by recognizing that we cannot afford some things and act accordingly. If we had done that 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, rather than continue to spend more money than we had coming in, we wouldn't have the problem we have now. If we don't act on it now, we're going to have this kind of a discussion year after year. As long as we spend more money that comes in, we're going to have a deficit. The federal government has a deficit, the state government, we're told, has a deficit, the town has a deficit, and I submit that many of our residents have a deficit. So we all have to scale down. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. I felt compelled to get up and address my use of the word fun. that was a reference to when times were better, we could do more optional things. And kind of to second what Charlie just said, we need to make a distinction now between what we must have, that would be teachers, the police and the fire department, right? And things that are certainly optional in tough times. That was what I meant by the, it was a poor choice of words, I apologize for that. But that's the distinction that we need to make.
Thank you for their clarifications. I'll give Peter 5 minutes and the school representative 5 minutes, and then we'll talk about traffic.
I'll take less than 5 to give the school folks more if they like. Just a couple points of clarification, then I want to touch on a couple points that were raised. And let me say, it's been very helpful, at least for me, to hear what everybody has to say tonight. I think it's been a very useful dialogue, and I don't want to drag on here very long. One gentleman mentioned and talked about this chart on page 37, and there's some confusion, I think, about this, and I just want to clarify. This chart only deals with what we call municipal spending, which is just what the town does. It does not include the schools, and that's why you see the municipal line being so low, because the municipal spending has remained relatively low in comparison to school spending, as we've made room for the very dramatic increases in enrollment that have occurred during the 1990s. There was also another comment, and it's helpful because it's on the reverse side of this page, page 38. That shows the trend in total expenditures, and there was a comment made early on about it used to be about 1/3, 2/3, and now it's gone to about 1/4, 3/4. It actually used to be more about 36%, 64%. It's now down to about 70/30 in terms of the split between schools, and that also includes, by the way, the amount of money we spend each year on Minuteman, which has in some years gone up rather dramatically, in other years gone down. But I just want to make sure people are clear that one side of the chart relates just to municipal expenditures. The other chart does lay out trend over time of expenditures, both by the town, or what we also sometimes call municipal. I know it gets confusing as opposed to the school expenditures. There was a couple of people, and then Senator Reeser got up and talked a little bit about senior tax relief. Some of you know that's also been an issue that I've been very interested in and worked on for a number of years. We just sent, and I don't know whether the senator has even seen it yet, but we sent 3 different proposals for legislation to be filed in this legislative session in hopes that something will get passed. In addition, I think the selectmen are 100% behind, but perhaps not, but I'm going to be proposing at an upcoming meeting that we have an article at annual town meeting this year, which would be a home rule petition requesting legislative action to benefit just the town of Acton, if at all possible. We really have maxed out locally what we're able to do for seniors in terms of tax relief, because we're constrained by state law. And like the property tax, this is really an issue, and it's really tied to property taxes, that we really need to work through the state legislature, either through what's called a home rule petition or a direct legislative initiative. But it is something that we are working on. Bill Mullen mentioned the re-engineering proposals. The issue was raised about productivity. I would note that I think it was 3 years ago, we did sort of a look back on the different, I think there were 10 different proposals that his group came back with. We actually enacted 6 of those, and I think it was 3 years ago, because I think it was the year I was chair, we calculated that we had realized savings just in that 1 year of over $1 million due to those proposals. So I think productivity is something we do watch fairly closely. I believe last year at town meeting, Selectman Foster, who was then chair, presented a chart that showed the tremendous increase in our finance department in terms of number of transactions processed per staff person. So that is an issue we take very carefully. One thing that I learned the other night when the planning department, and Warren was in representing the planning board, related to planning, and I think this is important to get out as soon as possible. We will be doing, hopefully, an update, or actually a new master plan within the next couple of years. So in terms of planning, in terms of development and growth, trade-offs between residential development and commercial development, all these kinds of issues which have been raised. I hope people will participate in that process because that's a very important key in terms of where we're going to move this town from a planning perspective in the future. It's very early at this stage, but hopefully it will begin within the next year. Let me see, there were a couple of other points that were made that I wanted to touch on. Oh, commercial development and the split tax rate. We had what's called tax classification hearing Monday night before the selectmen, which is where we essentially make the decision whether to stay with a uniform tax rate, which is what we've had the last 3 years, or go to a split tax rate. And I'm going to also try to respond to Matt Liebman's question about commercial development in town. When we were presented with the data that shows the increase or the change in values of commercial properties versus residential values this year, commercial properties had stayed almost exactly constant from last year, whereas residential property values had gone up about 7%. I made the point at the meeting that what that amounts to is that in the coming year, if we stayed with a uniform tax rate, and the selectmen did in fact vote to stay with a uniform tax rate, the residential tax bill on average would actually be increasing more than the commercial tax rate. I think, at least in my mind, one of the reasons that we are trying to support commercial businesses in this town, aside from the fact that they do donate a fair amount to our town, is that we're trying to encourage their growth. We're trying to encourage their taking up some of the slack from the residential tax burden. However, the trend actually is going in the opposite direction, and I made the point to those who were in the audience, and I would note that the only people who were in the audience commenting were commercial businesses, that next year, if we see a similar trend, I would certainly be an advocate for a split tax rate as opposed to a uniform tax rate. Now, I don't know what will happen, but it's a real conundrum. We are trying to encourage commercial development in this town. We have the Economic Development Committee, which is trying to explore different ways, yet at the same time, because of the economy, and yet the continued hot real estate market in this community, we're really sort of caught between kind of a rock and a hard place. And so it's a tough issue. I think we will continue to try and encourage commercial development where we can, but right now it sure seems to be an uphill battle. I think I've tried to touch on at least some of the comments, and I think I'd like to turn it over to the schools.
I'm going to take all that extra time out of your 5 minutes that you didn't use, Peter. I'm Marie Altieri. I'm the chair of the Acton Public School Committee. There's so many things to respond to, and I want to keep it very brief. First of all, this has been extraordinarily helpful for those of us on town boards trying to figure out where we want to go with the issues that we're faced with. All of the school committee is here this evening, spread out amongst the audience, so we're all listening, as well as the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. I think the thing I'd most like to respond to is the question for more information, because there's certainly much more information available to everybody. We have found email to be a very helpful tool, both to hear from you what your priorities are and to send out to people what is happening. We will certainly develop the priority list. We've done it the last several years and get it out as widespread as possible. We put out a question last month about whether school should start before or after Labor Day, and we've gotten 500 responses. We've gotten 5 on the budget. So we truly want to hear from you as to what you'd like us to do with the current situation. Additionally, the questions about how do we compare to more than the 25 towns listed in the booklet. I mean, I think we tried to limit the size of the booklet in terms of certainly what the budget information that we put in to make it as readable as possible. I think if you went to the DOE or DOR website, you would find a wealth of information. We've often referred to, there was a Boston Magazine article last year or the year before, comparing our high school to every high school in the state,
there were only 3 or 4 that had higher class sizes than ours. If you look at all these other towns, you'll see we have since then, in 2 years, added 250 kids to the high school, and we have fewer teachers than we had 3 years ago. So we are, I think, if you get into the schools, if you get into town hall, you will see departments who are stretched to the limit. And any ideas that people have of things we should not be doing that we're doing now, we would love to hear them. The one thing I don't feel as though we heard much about tonight is an override, the size of the override, what people want us to do. And I think that the leadership group has really tried not to come out and say this is what we're going to go for. So we need to hear from you as to what you're looking for in that area. And again, email us. We'll get you on our email list. We'll get things out as much as possible. Thank you.
You all are here tonight participating in what I think is a very transparent governmental process. In the 20 years I was on active duty, I moved all over the country, and to the degree that I could as a serving officer, participated or observed the political process. And I ended up coming to Acton as what I thought was a way station on the road to at least another 10 years of service, and found this town was such a lovely place to live, not for its trees and its buildings, but for its people in the form of its government, that I quit that career and stayed, and I'm still here. This sort of interaction is possible all the time in our government. All the people that sit on boards and committees and volunteers are always eager to hear public comment. Even when I get an email and somebody says we're a louse and we're spending too much money, at least somebody's paying some attention. I mean, really. And we don't agree with everybody, and everybody doesn't agree with us. But it is helpful for us to hear from you. And what Marie just said is very true. We're wrestling with whether we should have an override, and if so, what level it should be, and how we should structure the question. And if you have more thoughts on that, we'd certainly like to hear it. Unfortunately, we're amazingly right on my schedule. It always scares me when the selectmen are on my schedule. I think there's something wrong. But it's time for us now to talk about trash. And no aspersion on his particular character, but our trash man is Bob Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. And personally, thank all of you that have stayed this late to hear about trash. We have here today, well, pages 56 and 57 of your booklet contain the basic description of the issues and the progress made to date, and it also contains the membership of the Life After Nesbitt Committee. A number of us are here. Peter Ashton is my co-chair. Ann Chang and Pat Clifford are here to answer questions, and I believe or John Murray is with us also, the assistant town manager is part of that committee, and Gary McCarthy, I think, is somewhere around here. Yeah, sitting right here. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to make citizens aware of the activity of the Life After Nesbitt Committee, answer questions about the progress to date, and encourage participation as we move forward. In addition to the description on pages 56 and 57, there are maps on page 58 and 59 describing the transfer station and the DPW facilities. We have larger versions of those maps if they're needed for the discussion. The contract with Waste Management, the Nesbitt contract, expires in September of 2005. We have the option of adopting a new contract with Waste Management at much more favorable terms than the current contract. At this point, we're the only one of 23 Nesbitt communities that has not re-upped. We still have that option available to us. However, Acton has an asset in terms of the transfer station, which is accessible from Route 2. It also has a liability in terms of the old landfill, which has not been capped at current DEP standards. When we adopted this process, the first step was to circulate a town-wide survey this spring, or actually in the late winter, with what Acton to find out what Acton citizens are doing now with respect to trash disposal and where we would like to see the town go in the future. While the survey returns were very clearly biased to citizens who currently use the transfer station, there was strong support for both recycling, possibly beyond what we do now, and for continued opportunity to use the transfer station as individuals. The Life After Nesbitt Committee was formed to study Action's options with the immediate goal of making a recommendation in time to be acted on at the April 2005 annual town meeting. The three basic aspects of the trash problem in Acton are getting trash and recyclables away from individual homes, getting trash and recyclables out of Acton, and preventing the further spread of contamination from prior landfill operations. Included in this is capping the landfill to current standards. In addition, a risk assessment will be done for each option considered. Okay, the options considered. The status quo is one, maintain the current transfer station operations, including brokerage, which we do now, which ups the volume to the point where it's economical. Resident only, scale back the transfer station options, operation to trash and recycling for residents only. This could be done with the waste management contract that's being offered to us. We could exit the trash business and totally privatize it. We can privatize the transfer station itself, and we can contract for townwide curbside pickup. When we started studying this, we realized that we did not have a clear understanding of the financial implications. To get a handle on that, we authorized writing a series of requests for proposals. These are on the street, and those that are returned will be opened in mid-January. This information should let us make recommendation of the next step. The RFPs come in three parts. Townwide curbside pickup of trash, recyclables, and yard waste in the appropriate season. Private operation of the transfer station with mandatory improvements, and which includes capping, and business use of the landfill, which also includes capping. There's a fairly large area there. A pre-bid conference was held this morning, as a matter of fact. Over 30 people were in the audience. There's clearly interest in the RFPs, and we expect more than one response to each of the RFPs. The questions that were asked at that conference were quite specific, indicating the document had been studied, or the documents had been studied. There was concern for both specific details of what was expected in the responses and potential liabilities, mainly environmental, that the responders would have to consider if they had a successful bid. Now let's talk just a little bit about the timeline. Bid opening is scheduled for January 15th. This will be followed by staff analysis, which should be done within a week, and shortly after a meeting of the Life After Nesbitt Committee. A public information session will then be scheduled probably in mid-February to get that information out and get people's opinions on what's going on, what they think of it. The goal is to have a recommendation for the selectmen in time for action at the April annual town meeting. Let me finish up. We welcome questions. Our goal is to have a very open process for Life After Nesbitt, which will result in a proposal which serves the needs of the citizens of Acton, is in the town's best financial interest, and is environmentally sound. Thank you.
This is a matter that is in progress. Guidance has been obtained through survey and some scattered citizen comment beyond that. Clearly, there's going to be another informational session, but we would certainly welcome your views, your input. It's largely going to be, hopefully, a matter of choosing among the RFPs. Each one would be compared internally, but there's going to be a policy decision as to what we do, which is represented by the various alternatives. So we'd be very happy to hear any comment that you have to give us tonight, and we'll start with Michael and back here.
Thank you. I'm Mary Michaelman. I live on Magnolia Drive. I'm also the president of CASES, which is Acton Citizens for Environmental Safety. And Carol Holly's on the After Nesbitt Committee, and she's an ACES board member. She wanted me to point out that that doesn't mean that ACES blesses everything that comes out of the committee. She just wanted me to make that clarification. ACES does have concerns and would like this process to include due diligence and caution and a fully informed decision. And so I want to thank the selectmen for looking into options and to try and create a mechanism so that we can examine each of the options and make an informed decision. My comments actually are personal comments rather than ACES comments. One thing that I am concerned about is that with two of the RFPs, we're asking for capping of the landfill, and with one of those RFPs, we're allowing the person who might come in and run a regional transfer station to add additional fill to the area. And I think that typically that fill is either CAT, which is central artery tunnel fill, or it comes from construction and demolition debris. And Massachusetts DEP has certain standards that that fill has to meet in order to be used for that purpose. And part of where my concern for caution comes is that in the town of Wilmington, a landfill was capped using DEP-approved material, and they now have a very serious contamination problem that's going to cost them millions of dollars to solve. And so if there's any way that we can proactively make sure that we don't end up in a similar situation, then that's what I think we should do. And I'm not quite sure what steps need to be taken in order to safeguard us, but I think that we need to not rush through this process. We need to give it due diligence, and I'm kind of worried about the timeline. April town meeting sounds pretty quick for some really serious decisions. And part of what our incentive is based on our past experience with Neswick. We were in a 20-year contract and we found ourselves in something that wasn't what we expected, and we couldn't wait to get out of it. And I would hate for us to then sign up for a similar situation. The third RFP is called the Acton Business Center, and that's proposed to be a 50-year lease. And I would like us to take the time to really look at each of the options and consider it from every angle. And if that means signing up with Neswick for an extra 1 year so that we really know what we're getting into, then to me that seems a reasonable consideration, especially given that the Acton Business Center RFP is very open-ended. It pretty much is, tell us what you think you can do with the area. And so it seems like we could end up with a lot of creative suggestions, and to fully vet them, I think we need to take the time to really look at everything and consider it from every angle. One thing that I've learned is it seems that the current RFPs are not necessarily looking at allowing residents to still do their own personal disposal at the transfer station. That it looks like maybe that's not something that the vendors are going to offer based on the RFPs. And I think that's something that the public requested, and so I just hope that the RFPs aren't what comes back from that isn't the only option that we consider, that we really do think about the feedback we got from the survey. And I think Bob mentioned recycling, and maybe really making sure we're recycling. As a person concerned about the environment, I would like to see us promote waste reduction, promote more composting, promote more recycling, provide public access via dump stickers, minimize the additional fill that goes in with the capping procedure, and if we feel that we need more stringent oversight on what is in that fill, then, take whatever steps might be necessary. I don't know that any monitoring is currently being done beyond the perimeter of the dump to see whether or not the plume is migrating. I know that there are stations that are sampled yearly, just right at the boundary there, but I don't know if beyond it it's being done. So I guess to summarize, I think, due diligence, caution, giving us all an opportunity to see what the options are and absorb them and provide feedback would be great. And thank you for going through this process. I know how painful Neswick has been, and thank you for going forth.
It's been 19 years of grinding our teeth. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, hi, I'm Shirley Ambassador from Church Street, and based on the information you just explained, that there's 3 RFPs out there, and they all seem to not include the status quo, as Mary pointed out, that the town is looking to disinvest from the transfer station. Am I understanding that correctly? That's one question I have. And secondly, I know in some previous forums on this subject, the concept of pay-as-you-throw in terms of spending money for trash has been brought up, and I hope that's included in some of the RFPs that have been issued or some of the responses we get, or at least something that we can have a further discussion about, especially since the previous hour and a half was spent on the municipal budget. Paying for trash collection as a utility, you pay for what you throw out, tends to help decrease pressures on the municipal budget. So I just wanted to ask those 2 questions, and again, thank you for going through this process, and be interested in hearing how this proceeds.
Thank you. I believe you were next.
Warren Lee on Main Street. I'm not sure what the right thing to do, but as you're thinking about this, I hope you will think about the impacts of the environment on the environment broadly. And there are several different impacts to think about beyond what happens within the confines of the transfer station. For example, one benefit of curbside pickup is eliminating several thousand car trips a week and eliminating excess use of gasoline. Another benefit of town-sponsored curbside pickup is eliminating private haulers running the same routes, just picking up random houses instead of having one contractor who's stopping at every house. Another thing I would want to know, if you were to consider making it a regional station for disposal of trash from outside people, is where would that trash go otherwise if it wasn't going here? What are the relative environmental impacts, not just for Acton, but for society as a whole, on placing that trash in this location versus other locations, in terms of not just the impacts in terms of solid waste disposal, but impacts in terms of gasoline use and other energy uses. And then on top of that, I would like to see, certainly support the idea of pay-as-you-go use of the disposal services. In general, it's always good, it seems, in society to be taxing people for things that are bad and not for taxing things that are good. That's one reason why it's always good to have low income taxes, because you want people to make lots of income. It's good to have high taxes on things that cause pollution, like use of energy or disposal of trash. So linking people's fee payments to an incentive structure that encourages them to generate less trash certainly seems desirable.
First gentleman, if you would, Mark.
What he said. I'd like to agree with Warren and Joanne and Mary, but that's not why I'm here. I'd like to make two questions that hopefully could be answered in the response section if we have time. First is, I'm not really clear on the RFP's purpose of those. Are we just going to get estimates for those different approaches that are being proposed, and how binding are they? That's the first question. The second question I have is, if the landfill is capped adequately, can it be used at the same time as the transfer station is being operated? So can we put recreational fields on the capped landfill while we still operate a transfer station?
Looking at the time and having promised the closure at about 10, I'm going to take the three speakers that are standing and ask them to be reasonably succinct, and then we'll have Bob respond to the question portions of it, or his delegate. Sir.
Okay, quick points. Number one, the pay-as-you-throw model is, I agree, I like the general principle, the concept of carbon tax, energy tax, whatever. Makes sense. The problem we do have to worry about is if there is an unpaid alternative, as in trash ending up in places where it shouldn't. We need to make sure that people who have trouble with tax collection costs have some alternatives, or that it's all lumped in as a townwide kind of thing, that there aren't any alternatives. Second question is, where are politicians going to ask us for their votes? Saturday mornings in election season, I mean, please. My third question, which is quite serious, is there's a paragraph in here that says the termination clause in the current contract provides Waste Management the ability to make a counter-proposal, and if the quote meets or beats the Acton plan, we must continue with Waste Management. I don't understand what that means at all. Further explanation. Thank you.
Philo Pierce, 2 Pfeiffer Drum Road, Acton Center. One question I certainly see is first, the statement that trash removal is not as simplistic as people think it is. I'm sure this is a very complex type of deal. My own experience with the Department of Defense, $1 million programs, I've done source selections. I'd like to know what your scoring criteria is, which is certainly a tiger by the tail. And what is the evaluation criteria of the RFP, plus the scoring, and also the cause and effect relationship, because you got plan A, B, C, and D I have here, and I think you've got to make a T diagram, which I call advantages, disadvantage. You draw a T, and on one side you put the advantage of a plan, and also advantages, and I think the public should know this, of each one of these plans that should be exposed as soon as possible, what they think it is. Also, I hope there's no decision been made already about this, but I know the cause and effect relationship has to be decided with town employees who will be laid off if you privatize now. Some people say, who cares? Well, I do care. I certainly want to see what you're going to do. You also, outsourcing is a very popular solution, or fad if you want to call it, and it has its plus and minuses. So I think you have to look at the plus and minuses of outsourcing. A lot of politicians, a lot of businesses that outsource, have to clean this building anymore, but there's problems still with honesty, what they're doing. So I think just because they say in paper that they're going to recycle everything, how do you know really what they're doing? And I read here where they said everything goes to one disposal point, and now they sort it out. Who knows what that's going to be? So that's of course, the other thing I said is you got to tell me what your priorities are in this RFP. And I'd also like to see there should be a scoring matrix where you have contractors on one part and have your scoring criteria across on 5, 6, or 20 items, and you score each contractor on each of these criteria items, and you got to have a weight to them too. It's a very important thing.
And Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. We're getting the last word here. I'll say something that I think everyone will agree with. I have lived in Acton, as some of you know, since 1988. I live at Nagog Woods, and we have a private trash hauler. So I've missed out apparently on a substantial piece of Acton culture going to the transfer station. But I do go to Hazardous Waste Day, and my comment is very, it's like the micro environmental comment. In the 15 years I've lived here, also the state has closed a number of crossovers of Route 2, so that we all, when we go there, go down Forest Street. I looked to buy a house on Forest Street last year, and this is not the reason we didn't buy it, but it would seem to me that if we're going to have commercial haulers there should be some restrictions that they shouldn't be able to use Forest Street. They should only be able to access the transfer station by means of Route 2. That's my comment.
And then we'll have you, okay. Bob will try to respond to a few of the questions. Several of them are fairly broad reaching. And this situation, whatever we do, I would particularly urge all the citizens to look at it very carefully. I was sitting in town meeting, I was not then elected to anything. When we, I'm sorry, yes I was on school committee, but I wasn't a selectman. When the Nesbitt contract was proposed, I listened to what everybody else did to the presentation. Well, they were wildly wrong on what the economy was going to do, but everybody can do that. But the structural sections of the contract were terrible. And I, like most people, did not go and read the contract until, you know, we were a year or two in and we were in trouble. We didn't get it right this time. Let's see corporately if we can't get this right this time.
Okay, I'll try to answer the questions as best I can and call upon my fellow committee members to add to it if they do. First of all, not included in the RFPs was the possibility of Acton continuing to use the transfer station as we do now in some form or other. We don't have to submit a bid ourselves. We can go ahead and do that on our own. And that would include current use. Right now, about half the citizens half the single-family houses in town use the transfer station. About half have presumably have private haulers, that doesn't include the businesses and condominiums and apartments. Mary raised the issue of attention to the environment. That's why we very specifically asked ACES to help us with the representative on the committee, and we're looking for all the help we can get on that. And we're very concerned with that. I think Actonians in general are very concerned with the environmental issues, and we'll be looking at that. As you throw, hopefully that will show up in the RFPs, or if we continue to run the transfer station ourselves, we would probably do something like that. That's being considered. But what we discovered when we started this process is that we really didn't have a financial handle on anything, which is why we went the RFP route. We're not committed to accepting any of the RFPs. We can choose whichever path. In fact, a lot of these things are mutually conflicting. We can't accept all the RFPs because some of them use the transfer station, some of them would want to remove the transfer station, for instance, a business center. We're not committed to disinvesting in the transfer station. Okay, car trips. I think General Warren, I missed his last name from Main Street, was right that right now I guess we have about 1,600 car trips on a given Saturday, on an average Saturday. If we went commercial, that would cut down the traffic a lot, and if we had fewer haulers with a more effective route, that would cut that down. But we'll have to see that. The responses to the RFPs are not binding on Acton. We can accept them or not. Termination clause, that's something we're stuck with. John Murray refers to this as the hand from the grave. When the Nesbitt contract dies, we have this agreement that's in the original contract, which is, we're 19 years into it at this point, that if we come up with another solution, they have 90 days to match.
What does match mean? Financially?
John says it's not fully defined in the contract, so. Yeah, there's general agreement that the original contract mistakes were made. And the purpose of this committee is to do the best we can for Acton in a very transparent process, vetting all possible solutions, and we encourage people to show up at our meetings, get educated, help us. Termination clause, yeah. The scoring criteria are included with the RFPs, which are available in the library and reference section. I think that covers as best I can what your questions are. Any people would look at it? Thank you.
We're getting done 2 minutes early. Thank you all for coming. I confess to one great mistake setting up here tonight. I had 2 rows of seats reserved for people who might answer questions. I didn't realize we didn't need to reserve anything in the front. Thank you.